Hello, everyone. My name is Ole Kagan, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator with LA County Library, and I welcome you to Work Ready Creativity in Career Pivots. All right, and now I'd like to tell you about the Work Ready program. Work Ready started in December of 2020 with the purpose of helping people get a job, improve their work situation, and plan a more sustainable career path. We do that in two ways. One, we lend out laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots out of 27 library locations, breaking down one barrier to applying for a job and getting online training. And number two, we provide virtual events just like this one about all sorts of work-related topic, beginner to advanced, from resumes, cover letters, interviews, to deep dives into various careers and other subjects that will help you succeed at work. And you can see over 50 of those past classes at any time by going to our work and career playlist on our YouTube channel. And I'm going to post a link to that playlist in just a moment in the chat so you can peruse those as I go through my introduction. There's that. And then, of course, this program is made possible due to funds provided by the American Rescue Plan and future programs as well, including next week's program, June 20th at 11 a.m. We're going to have the pros and cons of gig work. So if you're interested in potentially either making something a side job, part-time job, or making a living from gig work, Uber, Instacart, Fiverr, are all platforms that you can use. And next week, we're going to be having a panel of 4 women who have firsthand experience with gig work, both part-time and full-time. And so if you're interested in learning more about that world, that program is absolutely free. And I'm posting a link to that program in the chat right now. You can see the description, you click on the link, register. And even if you're not able to make it next Tuesday, you will receive, as soon as you register, or after you register after the program, you'll receive an email with a video link to that program, which will be posted on our YouTube channel, just like this program. And so if during this program you need to leave early, or if you miss anything, don't worry. Don't worry about having to take copious notes. This program will be posted on our YouTube channel, perhaps later on this week, maybe even today, and you will receive an email with information about that video link and some of the other information we talk about during the program. And if you're interested in learning more about LA County Library programs, you can learn more about those at lacountylibrary.org. On the top right-hand side, click the events button, and there you get all in-person and virtual events for all ages, youth, teens, adults, older adults. And if you're just interested in virtual programs, you can hover over that events button and there will be a drop down that says virtual program. You click on that and you'll get all of our Zoom programs, also all ages, all absolutely free on a variety of topics that may be of interest to you. And speaking of topics that are of interest to you, I'd like to introduce our presenter for today, Creativity and Career Pivots. Kim Zanti is the founder and director of Catalyst Muse, which she created to channel her optimism for a better world through storytelling, engaged inquiry, and purposeful action. Over the course of a 25-year career as a public benefit development specialist, she strategically communicated values and vision, raising millions of dollars for clients such as the Los Angeles County Arts Commission, Get Lit Words Ignite, Pacific Residence Theater, and many more. Then, in a career pivot of her own, Kim joined Dr. James S. Catterall at the Centers for Research on Creativity to further his mission to understand human creativity and the condition that can promote imaginative approaches to learning, design, and problem solving. As the center's associate director, Kim served as a project coordinator on multiple projects for clients such as the Walt Disney Company, Inner City Arts, Educational Theater Association, Alameda Office of Education, and the Royal Blind School of Scotland. Kim holds a master's degree in creative studies and a professional certificate in creativity and change leadership from the Center for Applied Imagination, SUNY Buffalo. As a volunteer in her Santa Monica mountain community, she co-founded the Topanga Authors Group and the Transport Topanga Literary Festival. And with that, I turn the microphone, as it were, over to Kim Zanti to present creativity in career pivots.
Wow, thank you, Oleg. And I'd like to tell everybody that Oleg and I were co-founders of the Transport Topanga Literary Festival. We had the opportunity to bring to the community and the Topanga Authors Group monthly meetings for several years. So it's very good to be here. Thank you, Oleg, for the introduction. And as Oleg said, I pivoted in my own career at various times and moving laterally and vertically from like being on the ground at the Centers for Research on Creativity to going vertically in the 30,000 foot level to the LA County Arts Commission, and also going from small organizations on the ground to the LA County Arts Commission. That kind of is an example of a pivot, because I was in the same arena with a different vantage point of understanding and engaging in the work in that arena. And I'm here today because I worked in the arts and culture arena for over 25 years, and I really did not understand creativity in the way that I do after becoming a researcher and then studying for my master's program, and really understanding that creativity is a skill and it's available to all of us. And while I was in that program, I learned about a set of creative thinking skills that are more than a concept. They are a practical set of skills that that's what we're going to talk about and engage with and demonstrate and then practice today. And hopefully yesterday you received the email from Oleg with the PDF one sheet with those skills on it. And if you didn't, check your spam or your junk box and see if it's there. It's very useful. And today we're going to use those creative thinking skills to give you prompts and discuss your responses. We hope you engage in the chat with us with it, and to talk about the creative thinking skills as they relate to your own work life and changes you might be anticipating or preparing for or in the midst of. And we, both of us truly, really believe, it sounds like I'm lying when I say truly, really, but I mean it, that these skills can open up whole different ways of viewing yourself and your possibilities and potential for work. So before we start, though, we'd like to know a little bit about who is in the room, because I can't see you. I know you're out there, and I really appreciate you being here today. So if you could, in the chat, just share, and only Oleg and I will see your responses. What motivated you today to attend this class? What were some of the reasons that you decided to spend time with us? Or what are some of the reasons you may have decided to make a change in your work life? Okay, so we got a nice response. Someone is a professional looking to make a career pivot. Can I ask, okay, there we go. High school art teacher, interested in options for change. Okay, wonderful. Spend more time with family, feeling stuck, understand that. Wow, here are lots coming in. Someone who's in the midst of a career pivot, who always considered themselves creative, but was recently let go of a job that they loved. and forced to kind of pivot. So thank you folks for sharing. Someone who wants to succeed as an actor, well, you're in the right place in LA, and it is also very competitive, and you need to bolster your courage. And I'm tell you, I'm a writer, and these skills have helped me so much to bolster myself as a writer. Looking to explore all career options. Want to move into community events and away from social media, healing, education. Went to college for a career in the medical field, and then went to work in higher education. Now work for the church, looking to move ahead and unsure how to make a career move. I hope, my goal is that after this session, you will have lots of tools to use, to put into play to help you answer that, to respond to that wall that you're hitting. Would love to be a children's book illustrator. Okay, totally get that. All right, thinking about shifting into UX from industrial design. Okay, that's a pivot, right? You're going into I interpret that as user interface. And is that correct? And okay, awesome. And from industrial design. So some of the same skills, some of the same types of problem solving perhaps, or challenges to respond to, different world. Okay. Okay, wow, lots of great things. Well, thank you, everybody. You can keep adding to the chat, because it gives us a lot to work with to understand why you're here and what it is that you're interested in. And so from here, I'm going to share my screen and put up what I have behind me here. Let's do this first. And we're going to make this full screen. Bear with me. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yep, it's coming through, Kim.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think this is a very powerful statistic. In 2021, more than 47 million people in the USA quit their jobs or changed their jobs, really. And that statistic is from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. In 2022, an additional 38 million people in the US quit their jobs. So in 2021, that was roughly 20% of the 23% of the 188 million people working in the United States. And then 20% more in 2022, 38 million people quit their jobs. So why that matters today is because this is in relation to the changes you're going to make. There are 85 million people making changes in their jobs, whether they are voluntary changes or forced, as someone said in the chat, 85 million people changing jobs. And really, that is a tremendous shift in not only the economy at large, but in personal lives. And so many people have changed their jobs that a term has been coined for it, and that is the Great Resignation. And that was coined by a professor named Dr. Anthony Klotz, who is a professor at the University College London School of Management. He coined that term in 2021. And remember, we were in the midst of COVID when he predicted a sustained mass exodus. And in response to this Great Resignation, businesses had increased the rate of automation, and creating a boom in robotics and artificial intelligence. And just a few years later, we see how quickly that technology has advanced. So this trend, the Great Resignation, started with the pandemic, we think, but it actually started many years ago and can be attributed to 5 main factors. Retirement. People are retiring in greater numbers. They aren't relocating in greater numbers. They're reconsidering their work-life balance and their care roles, which several of you talked about in the chat. They're making localized switches among industries or reshuffling. And I should say you're retiring in greater numbers, relocating somewhat, not in large numbers, but reconsidering what industry you're in or reshuffling your priorities, and also demonstrating a reluctance to in-person jobs. So making the switch to full-time or hybrid work where you remain at home or remain off-site from the main office or workplace. And so maybe your pivot was inspired by one of these factors that are on the screen. And whatever your reasons for the pivot, the upshot is that the job market is alive with change. And although it's been described as being volatile and uncertain, and that's kind of scary, that uncertainty is where your opportunity lies. And so a pivot is a good place to start to take advantage of these potential opportunities. And so, as I said, today we're going to learn how to intentionally use creative thinking skills to guide you as you go through the pivot. But first, let's define our terms. What's a pivot? And what's our working definition of creativity? And after we do that, then we will review the skills and play games with those skills. Okay, so here we are using an example from basketball. And I don't know if I have to do that in order to play the video. So we're going to start this video and hope that it works. All right. Okay.
The pivot itself is just moving around while leaving one foot in contact with the ground at all times, because the rules dictate that you're allowed to move only one foot when stationary with the ball. The foot that stays planted on the floor is referred to as the pivot foot.
Okay. So as we were trying to come up with an idea to illustrate a pivot, it felt like being basketball fans, LA Laker fans, we tried to find an LA Laker game, but couldn't find one that really you could see it well. That, what is it that, what is a pivot? And in this illustration, you see one foot stays in the same position, the body moves. And when the body moves, the vantage point moves because your head moves and your eyes move. So you're pretty much in the same place, but you're seeing it from a different perspective. And that's what I was talking about earlier. In Los Angeles, I was in the arts. I was working in theater. I was grant writing on the side for other organizations, and literary organizations, performing arts organizations. And so I was on the ground. Then I went to work for the LA County Arts Commission. And where I had been working with 1 or 2 organizations at a time, suddenly my work was affecting, the commission funds over 350, perhaps. I think that's still right. Organizations in the greater Los Angeles area. So suddenly they call it the 30,000 foot view. You're at this very different level in the same arena. And maybe you've had a similar experience. So that's what we mean about pivoting, is you're, as I talked about the UX and the industrial design person making that pivot, you're using some of the same skills, being faced with some of the same challenges, problem solving in similar ways, but a different arena. And it might call for you to present yourself differently, write about yourself differently, talk about your skills in a different way. So that's what the pivot is. And for Oleg, he has gone through pivoting with his computer skills. And as I said, I've gone through pivoting with my grant writing and development skills. So now we're going to talk about creativity. All right, let's see if I can get, okay, there we go. All right, so what is creativity? And if you ask Google, you will literally come up with about 3.1 billion pages that address this question. What is creativity? But the one that I like the best, and the one that I think serves across all human endeavor, is this one. Creativity is an idea that is new and useful to the person that had the idea. It's pretty simple, right? But it has taken several decades of scholarship for an agreement on this idea that it's that simple. There's a lot of nuance in this definition. Of course, there's going to be, depending on how it's applied. In creativity studies, one of those nuances is to define between big C creativity and little c creativity. Big C creativity being creativity that impacts many, many, many people, like the invention of the personal computer, or the invention of the car. Then there's little c creativity. And, those distinctions are taken with a grain of salt in terms of their labels. But what we're talking about today is little c creativity. It's an individual making a change, using their imagination to make that change. So creative thinking skills help us do that. Then whatever happens after that could be an example of creativity with the big C. So when you think about it, again, another reason I love this definition is it shows us creativity is not limited to artists or scientists or musicians, people that we think of as the creative ones. It applies to human beings. Human beings are creative. And when you think about it, we were born from an act of procreation, and we take that forward in our lives, and it's up to us to use it intentionally. So what are creative thinking skills? These are skills that let us use our creativity intentionally. And the development of these skills began with Dr. E. Paul Torrance. You may have heard of the Torrance tests creativity. And his colleague, Dr. H. Tammy Safter. And these skills and the presentation of these skills evolved through the work of other scholars, including Mary Murdoch and Dr. Sue Keller-Mathers, and were shaped in the current form by Dr. Cindy Burnett and her colleagues at the Center for Applied Imagination at SUNY Buffalo. So first, I'm going to review these skills, and then Oleg and I will demonstrate how to use them and then invite you to play along with us. So what you see on the screen is creative thinking skills. And they're broken down into 5 categories. And I'm going to go clockwise from foundational in purple to the essential 4 in blue, to skills for engagement in green. Then I'm going to go to focus on emotions and in red, and then I'm going to come back to future skills, because that's where what you're looking at is your future. So each of these skills has a title and then a brief explanation, and they can be used in whole or one. You decide you need to do one thing, and you pick a skill and you say, okay, I'm going to practice this today. So with foundational skills, in order to practice creativity, you need these skills to help you on your way. Keeping open, curiosity, look at it another way, risk-taking, embracing the challenge, and highlighting the essence. Good solid starting point for any kind of change or any endeavor that requires creativity. The essential four: produce and consider many alternatives, elaborate but not excessively, be flexible, be original. These build on the foundational skills. And these essential four allow for the most ideas to emerge without blocking them, so that they can be considered on their own and spark more ideas. And that's one really essential aspect of creativity. If anyone here is familiar with improvisation as an actor's tool, the prompt for an improvisational actor is yes and. Improv requires that you don't deny any ideas. If someone says, I'm a furry spider climbing up the wall, their acting partner says yes, and you have big, long legs. So it builds off the idea. It adds more detail to the scene. It gives the scene partner something to build on and work from, as opposed to shutting them down. I'm a big, hairy spider. No, you're not. Where do you go from there? And intentionally or not, we do it to ourselves and to each other, in our workplaces, in our families, with our friends, with our colleagues and networks. We don't even realize we're doing it. So think about these skills as a way to practice yes and. The next set is skills for engagement. And oddly enough, I have that covered. Playfulness and humor, make it swing, make it ring, enjoy and use fantasy, and visualize it richly and colorfully. And in the US, many of us find those kinds of concepts applied to our work to be verboten. Oh, you don't do that. You can't make it swing and make it ring at work. You have to follow the rules or play along. No, not when you're being creative. And really, these skills in green show us how to bring creativity to life, how not to think too logically, how to engage all of our senses, and to engage each other with the ideas that we've shared, so we can build upon each other's ideas instead of shutting each other down. And I really can't say enough about humor and how humor helps us to access our creativity. Think about it the next time you watch the news and a situation where you see political leaders or community leaders who inject humor into their speeches, and how it breaks open something in the air. We say break the ice, but it breaks open some tension. It releases some tension so that it increases inclusiveness, whatever that means, whether it's inclusiveness of people or ideas or possibility. So humor is a huge one. We're going to move ahead to focus on emotions. So be aware of emotions, embrace ambiguity, and practice mindfulness. Now, we hear that all the time in social media, people practicing mindfulness, expressing how they feel. And really, creativity starts with each of us, and so within each of us, we have the raw material to achieve our own vision and goals. And when we focus on our emotions and we're aware of our feelings, where we trust, where we're open to understanding, where we're open to embracing uncertainties, and being fully present in the moment, that's when our potential really rises to the surface. Okay, so speaking of potential, all of us have situations that we feel like it would be great if, and that's the prompt that we're going to give you right now. Wouldn't it be great if? And we're going to use this as a warm-up to our demonstration. And we're going to ask that you record your responses to this prompt in relation to the pivot or change that you're making or anticipating in your work life right now. And we're going to give you a minute to do this. Okay. And I'm going to go out of full screen so I can see the chat. And okay. 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 So I'm going to start the timer. And we're going to do 1 minute. Actually, Oleg, do you have a timer? I turned mine off.
I do. I have a timer handy.
Okay,
So
cool.
let's start the timer. So folks, you can respond in the chat, or you can just write something down for yourself in a notebook, or just think about it. Wouldn't it be great if, and the timer starts now. "30 seconds.
I love that.
All right, we're getting down to it. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Time's up.
Okay. So Oleg, let's read out a few of these because we did get a comment that someone wished that they could read these.
So yeah, so of course, wouldn't it be great if I could find meaningful work that allowed me to spend quality time with my family? Wouldn't it be great if I could obtain an internship under a landscape architect? I like the specificity. It's nice when it can be specific. If I could combine my love of helping people and having a schedule that is more balanced, it's really important work value there. Wouldn't it be great if we could pursue interests, make mistakes, and apply learnings without having to worry about compensation, cost of living, and bills? Amen. Wouldn't it be great uh, if I could be confident in my life's ability to create, manifest joyful contributions in line with our dreams? Wouldn't it be great if I wasn't so afraid to try something new and give myself a year to try to find a new job?
Yeah, I love that one too, because time goals really do help us kind of put our goals in perspective and help us kind of create benchmarks. Like, where do we want to be in 6 months? Where would we like to be for a year, in a year? And let's see, I love this. Wouldn't it be great if I found the essence of what I can give to others to redefine my best job description? That's wonderful. I know that the Work Ready program does have sessions on resume writing and promotion. And there was one I want to go back to. Well, whatever it said exactly, it said finding work that I love that also contributes to my community. I'm very big in, I worked in the public benefit arena for many years, and it's incredibly satisfying to do so, to do work that benefits the community. So I am personally excited for that idea. So we encourage you to hold your responses for yourself so that over time you can come back and look at them and then think about them again later on. Wouldn't it be great if? Okay. And so now we are going to practice creative thinking skills. And first we're going to demonstrate them.
Okay, so
And-
the way that this is going to work, and this is going to be the crux of our program here. This is kind of why we're all here and what the skill we're going to be demonstrating, or I should say Kim is going to be demonstrating these very skills that she's teaching you. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put another prompt on the screen in a moment, and then you will have another minute to respond to that prompt. Again, either for yourself on a piece of paper in your mind, or if you'd like Kim to consider your prompt, then place it in the chat as so many people have kindly been doing during our session here. Now, once that minute is finished, I will select a few of the prompts, and then I will use a random number generator to select one of these creative thinking skills. So we'll go from keep open, which is at the top, that'll be number 1, and then visualize it richly and colorfully will be number 20. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. So then Kim will take that prompt and combine it with the randomly generated creative thinking skill. So we don't know which ones they're going to be. And I think that the improvisation here is going to be fun. So this is our demonstration of yes and.
Yes.
So Kim, can you put up the prompt? So the prompt is, how might I? And you can respond to that specifically focused on your work, your job seeking, your current work situation. And if you want to, you could also shift it to what might be all the ways to, which is kind of the next question for yourself from how might I? All right, so let me put 1 minute on the clock, and you all will have that minute to respond to how might I, and I'll be looking in the chat and pulling out some of the prompts that we're going to use, and we'll do maybe 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, depending on how much time we have. But right now we're doing pretty well with time, so we should be able to do a few of them at least. So 1 minute on the clock and starting now. All right, and that is a minute, and feel free to keep placing your responses in the chat. I'm still going to continue to be looking at them. And so I've got a few selected here, and I think this is one of the ones, the first one that I want to do is, I think one of the ones that you talked about earlier, Kim, and it is, how might I dig deeper to find a job or career path that benefits me and my community? And so, Kim, if you'll bring up the creative skills slide, the one right before this one, then I will run the random number generator and we will cover that prompt, and then we'll move on to some other prompts.
I'm not sure. I
I think it's a slide right before that one, this one.
How does it not let me do that? Hang on.
I can also bring up, I have the document
All right,
here too, so I can start the,
do you have it?
yeah, I can bring it up right now. Oh, this is the wrong one. I can bring up the file.
Wait a minute, I have it. There we go. Okay. Can everybody see that? Let me go to play. Okay.
Yep, There it is. All right, so I'm going to run the random number generator now. And if you didn't know, Google actually has a random number generator. So you can type in random number generator into Google and one comes up right away. So I'm going to do from 1 through 20 and click generate. And the number is 5. So the number 5 is playfulness and humor. And the prompt is, how might I dig deeper to find a job or career path that benefits me and my community?
Okay, so that's my challenge, is to give you some ideas along this way of thinking. First thing I think is, if you have children, watch your children play. What is it about how your children engage with each other that brings a twinkle to their eye, or makes them giggle, or makes them happy, or makes them empathetic towards their playmates? Playfulness and humor, bringing fun and childlike enjoyment into the environment. So what makes you feel that way? Identify in your life those moments, and really kind of not just identifying the external environment that makes you feel that way, but it includes mindfulness, being playful. What makes you feel playful? What makes you want to tell a joke? What makes you want to laugh or make someone laugh? How can you bring those things into the work that you are pursuing? And in the language with which you think about yourself. One of the ways that you can inject playfulness and humor into your search is by giving yourself a break and letting yourself see the best of who you are, and allowing yourself to giggle when something goes wrong. Oh my gosh, did I really just do that? Okay, I get it. Next time I'll do it better. Allow yourself to fail. And when you do that, without beating yourself up and using your own sense of humor, it really, as we talked about earlier, leavens the weight that we put on ourselves to do things right, to do things correct. And it gives us an opportunity to just feel a little bit more elasticity in our work.
Yes, and I feel like with the playfulness of humor, you can just take it far and far and far. I have a toddler, so anybody who has had a toddler or interacts with them knows that they take things as far as possible in any direction. And so when you're looking for a job that can help, that can obviously compensate you, that benefits you and your community, how wild can you make your thoughts? Like, how far out can you think of something to do? It's because you can always scale back. So that the key is to go out and out and out and think from the community perspective, like what's the craziest thing I can do for my community that will benefit the community, also me. And then if you need to scale back, you can do that. All
I
right.
also, let me just throw in here too, Oleg. I am I admit to surfing YouTube for humor. I go to comedians who make me laugh. I watch the clips because they make me feel good. And I think in this world, in today's world, where we're all stressed and challenged by so many things, that it's really a good idea to keep your humor cup full. And even if you don't naturally aren't naturally attracted to comedians, you find other ways in your own life. The kids go to the playground, or yourself, go skip down the street. And that kind of gets into make it swing, make it ring. But really, there's just so many ways to just lighten up and lighten your load. And Oleg, before we go to the next one, can I ask you to put into the chat the prompt that you choose?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
okay.
I'll put it in for everybody. Yeah. I was going to say keep it fun. If for some people this will fill their cup with terror, but for me, I'm a fan of spiders. So when you said the improv game, somebody says you're I'm a spider with hairy legs sitting on the wall. I thought, really? Oh, where's that spider? Just for me, that's fun. Some people might be like, get me out of here. All right, so let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
So the next one, I'm going to put it in the chat at the same time as I read it. How might I, Kim, if you could stay back yeah, that one, yeah. How might I improve my public speaking skills and find a fully remote job which matches my qualifications and skill set? I would say that's almost two questions. I feel like how might I improve my public speaking skills is one whole question, and the next one is how might I find a fully remote jobs which matches my qualifications and skill set. So let's take the improve my public speaking skills
Okay.
out of that one. And so I'm going to go ahead and run the random number generator. And I almost feel like going boop, 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 boop. While I do that, and then it generated number 9. The number 9 is be flexible. Don't wait, elaborate, but not excessively. I almost got to be flexible. It's almost too flexible there.
Yeah, that's and this is a great skill to learn because and if you've ever heard in a performance, someone is with us who is looking for work as an actor. One of the things about public speaking is always leave them wanting more. So the idea that you want to be succinct, right? And you want to elaborate, but not excessively, so that you don't bore your audience, whether it's in however you're communicating, whether it's at a cocktail party or walking down the street with your friend or at a performance you're performing. Elaborate, but not excessively, adding details or ideas, developing them, filling in details for possible implementation. So when it comes to your work life and the pivot that you're about to make, one of the ways to apply this skill is to make a list. Make a list of the things that you've talked about in the chat, what you see yourself, what might be great to achieve or to do, or wouldn't it be great if, and kind of listing those things and then elaborating just a little bit, giving each thought a bullet point or two, so that you are, as you do that, you're developing your own thoughts about those qualities or those skills or those ideas. And it advances your thinking. And it does so in a way that doesn't feel burdensome. And as a writer, I hit those walls a lot where I'm like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to speak about this. I don't know how to write about this. Well, break through those walls. Just, a little detail. What does it mean? What does it mean to I wish I could have a remote job. Okay. What would that look like? Ask yourself questions. That's another way in relation to the pivots in your work life to elaborate, but not too much. Ask yourself a simple question. What hours of the day do I like the most? Do I work best? Maybe it's morning, maybe it's afternoon, maybe it's late at night. Maybe you'd love to be on the late shift at a hospital or in a nursery or something like that. So asking questions is another way to elaborate, but not too much. Keep, simple questions are really a good way to investigate your own feelings and thoughts. I always encourage with elaboration implies thought, because you're going to speak or write about something, or you're going to add to your performance. And so having a pen and paper handy, more so than a computer, there's a connection with the brain that happens in a different way when you use your own body to elaborate. And so if you just take a pencil, a pen, if that doesn't work for you and a keyboard works for you, that's totally great. But just elaborate on the idea a little bit more and keep your notes so that you can reference them as well. So
I really like what you said, Kim, when you said ask yourself a simple question, because I feel like almost synonym for this elaborate but not excessively is ask yourself a simple question. This is such a great place to start because you don't put pressure on yourself. So with public speaking skills, which I'm an enthusiast of public speaking, I've practiced a lot. I was a Toastmaster. And so when I think about somebody who's at the beginning of their public speaking journey, which I was, when I started with Toastmasters, when I think of that, I think of asking yourself the simple question, what's the worst that can happen? But don't stop there. Then ask yourself, what's the best that can happen? And I feel like one of those is a little bit has a little bit more weight than the other. We're afraid of what the worst that can happen, but really, what's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? So many opportunities can open up.
And thank you, Oleg, for bringing me back to the public speaking, because I do want to comment more specifically on that. The other thing about public speaking and elaborating is not only on expression, but elaborate on your experience, add to your experience. Go to places where you might have to speak, whether it is a professional gathering where you might have to turn to someone and say, what brings you here today? And see, it's a question. Questions are a great tool for so many things, because often we go into situations where we might, we don't know how to engage. Simply asking a question. I was just at a wedding where I didn't know anyone, and I simply asked, how do you know the bride and groom? Boop. I ended up talking to those people for 45 minutes. And so, questions are a great way to engage in conversation, to engage with other people, and have them ask you questions back spontaneously that you didn't script, that you didn't know were coming, and you have to respond. So that's a good way too, as to
It's interesting
improve
that
your
you brought that up, Kim. When I think about that, I think I can easily speak to 1,000 people, but when it comes to turning to a person sitting next to me and go and just ask them a simple question, like that's what fills me with fear. So I think it varies for each person, but yes, ask a simple question, elaborate, but not excessively. All right, let's move on to the next one, and that is, I'm going to post it in the chat before I read it, so that everybody can read it together. How might I go for a new career without getting sidetracked by all the complications associated with a new field that can intimidate me? How to get more education, learning new software, having to start a business, all those details that can potentially be challenging. So as you review that, I'm going to bring up the random number generator, and I'm going to generate a number. And that number is 3. 3 is look at it another way. So the prompt is, how might I go for a new career without getting sidetracked by all of the complications associated with a new field that can intimidate me? And we want to look at it another way.
Okay. And someone put in the chat, I love this question. Well, I will say I love this skill. Look at it another way, because often, especially when we're intimidated by something, when we have fear around something, where things are complicated and we can't quite see through the, through the weeds or the forest through the trees, you have to start somewhere. So you have to look, take it upon yourself to take a breath and say, what happens if I look at it another way? Oftentimes we get so attached to our first idea about how something is. Well, you can't do that because of this, that, and the other thing. Oh, well, what if you looked at it as, I don't know everything I need to know yet. Maybe I need to do some research. Because we come out of the gate. I am in Baltimore right now, where my family is. And one of the differences that I've noticed very distinctly is that oftentimes here on the East Coast, at least in my family, let me just shrink that down a little bit. My family likes to give you answers right away. So you got the answer. I know that. I know that. I know that. Okay, well, I don't. And I don't feel bad about knowing it because I don't have all the information. So when someone tells you this is the way it is, take it as this is the way that that person says it is. But there's such an infinite variety of ways to view any situation, especially if you feel intimidated. If you feel intimidated and you, let me read the description. If you see things from multiple perspectives, views, or mindsets, it alleviates a lot of pressure on you for having to have an answer. When you do that, you immediately become more open to ideas. You become less, you put less pressure on yourself. You give yourself the opportunity to see that you could possibly go direct towards a goal, or maybe move a little laterally and find out about how it might work if you got into this position or looked up or down. Exactly. So looking at things another way, in my mind, is not taking everything at face value or believing one piece of information, whether you generated that piece of information or that perception yourself, or it came from someone else, or a book you read, or some handed down what are the wives' tale, we all have those where you believe something and it's embedded in you because you grew up with it. One for me was idle hands are the devil's workshop. That was hanging on my refrigerator growing up. Well, I am a daydreamer. I am an idle person at least a couple hours a day in one form or another, and it benefits me greatly. So I look at it another way than I was taught to look at it. So think about this statement as well, or this skill, this creative thinking skill, in different ways. Look at it in another way than someone told you, or than you learned, or that you believed, or that you saw. You may have saw a very powerful event occur and had a belief from that moment on about the way things were when that kind of event happened. I knew someone who never drove a car because she witnessed a horrible accident. She never got her license until she was about 50 years old. Finally changed. She looked at it another way and she got her license. So yeah, anyway, I'll stop there.
No, that's good. And that's I'd say looking at it from another way is very important. And particularly in this situation, a person's is trying to get a new career, potentially things that are unfamiliar. But it's very possible that some of those things that seem intimidating at first might become your favorite activity once you do it. I don't know, there may be a few people out there, me among them, who are spreadsheet fans. So you might say, oh no, starting a business, that means I'm going to have to do all this bookkeeping. That means I'm going to have to do all this stuff with the numbers. And for me, that's like, that sounds great. That sounds very calming. But and it might be that way for you, even though on the outside it looks challenging. All right,
And
let's move on to
also,
go ahead, Kim.
let me just say that, in reviewing what we have done so far, look at it another way is a foundational skill. Playfulness and humor is an engagement skill. Elaborating but not excessively is an essential skill. So keeping that in mind too, that you can combine these skills and practice them so that you really are stretching your imagination, but also stretching your ability to respond to the challenges that you face, particularly in looking for new work. It is intimidating. It is scary. we get stuck in believing that we have to do what we're good at rather than do what we really want to do. And we might think that's selfish, or we might think it's impossible, or that we're not going to make enough money. But we get one life, we get a chance to do what we want to do. And the more you pursue it, the more it's likely that you're going to succeed at it. So keep that in mind and allow yourself the belief that you can succeed. And it sounds cliche, but it's cliche because it's true. If you pursue it, if you allow yourself to do what you want to do, most likely you can. So don't be afraid or allow yourself not to be intimidated.
We had a question in the chat, and I want to slip this in before we do one more prompt, and then you conclude the presentation. The question is, might you address which skill to pick when answering a question? I was going to say, like, random number generator, of course.
Well, that, and I mean, I think it really depends on the question. So for the person who asked, do you have a specific situation in mind, like a social situation, a work-related situation?
I don't think that I don't know if they have something specific. I think it's more just in general, like, how do you, is there a method to picking question, or do you just look at it and go, just close your eyes and choose one? Or there's, in some situations, there's some that are better.
Well, I will say that when answering questions, the elaborate but not excessively is a highly valuable one, because oftentimes people are curious. They want to know. They wouldn't have asked the question if they weren't, but they don't want a lot. Think of answering questions as stringing beads on a chain. And that your question and answer might lead to another question and answer that becomes a conversation. So out of all of them, I think that elaborate but not excessively is a really good one. And I also think that it depends on the situation. Being aware of your emotions is a big one when you're talking about things that might be sensitive or potentially confrontational. Being aware of how the question makes you feel. And before you respond to the question, answer the question, you take that into account. So, yeah.
I'm looking at right in the middle of the screen. It says highlight the essence. And I think that's a really good one when it comes to, you have a question, but you're not totally sure what exactly the question is. What's the most important thing about your question? What is it that you actually want to know? Sometimes, especially from the perspective of a librarian, where people ask us questions and the question they're asking may not be the actual piece of information they want. And so when you ask yourself a question, or when you get asked a question, you always want to know, well, what's the subtext of that question? What do you actually want to know? And then highlight the essence is a really great one there, because you want to get the right question. The right question will give you a good answer. So let's do one more prompt. And then if anybody has general questions, not related to the prompts or anything, then you can put those in the Q&A, and we'll do a few minutes of just general Q&A afterward. So let's do one more prompt. And that prompt, I think, is important for both me and you, Kim, and also for pretty much everybody in this class, I'm sure. And that prompt is, how might I become more confident?
Oh,
And
my.
how might I become more confident? And I'm going to run the random number generator to see which of the creative thinking skills you're going to need to bring to bear on that one. They're like, it could be a whole program just called Work Ready, how might I become more confident? And we just go 1 through 20 on that one. And it's going to be number 17. Get glimpses of is that number 17? Or put ideas in context? I think it's, 15, 16, 17. Let's see. Number
Yeah.
17.
Yeah.
15, 16, put ideas into context. So how might I become more confident? I almost want to get get glimpse of the future for that one. Put ideas into context.
Well, maybe I'll do both, and
Yeah.
I'll start with ideas into context. Putting smaller parts or experiences into a larger framework, putting things together in meaningful ways. This is a complicated thing to do. Not complicated, it's complex. So in relation to your working lives, so you have this idea that you're going to become a children's book illustrator, which was one of the comments in the chat.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Asking yourself questions is a good place to start, and
Mhm.
take your ideas about becoming a children's book illustrator and chunk them out. So I love to draw. Color makes me happy. The favorite books I read when I was a child are all of this that you break out so that you can then think about these ideas in the context of your goal or your challenge or your wish or your problem. Say you really aren't going to leave a job, but you need to solve a problem that you experience at the job. You might write down, you might elaborate on the problem and then put them in the context of how you would like to see that problem go away, how you would like to address that problem. So the central piece of this is breaking down your ideas within the context of what you're trying to achieve into smaller parts. You also, when you do that, you lessen the pressure you put on yourself, you lessen intimidation, you lessen fear, and you replace it with possibility, with hope, with a sense of, oh, okay, when I look at it that way, then I can move ahead. And the second part of this skill is putting together things in meaningful ways. I think often in our work life, we forget about meaning. And it's important to remember that however you spend your days is how you spend your life. And so if you're doing work that's not meaningful to you, how can you make a change that it can become more so? And then when you start chunking out your ideas and looking at them, you can find meaningful ways to reassemble them, to put them together to address your work life. And I'll just add, with getting glimpses of the future, predicting, imagining, exploring opportunities and situations that do not yet exist. We couldn't be in a better time to be thinking in this way, when we really don't know what the future is going to hold for humanity with the invention and the deployment of AI technologies, with the potential of jobs that haven't been created yet because of the challenges we face. So this is a really good thing to do on an individual basis, and that's to look at predict where you might go, imagine where you could go, and then explore in any way that you can, on the internet, through Google, through the World Wide Web, through your community, by trying something different, by using different words to think about yourself. Allow yourself to have to be confident. Right? Was that the question, really?
Yes,
Right?
how might I become more confident? I was gonna say, but the track that you're on right now is exactly what I was thinking. When I first saw Get Glimpses of the Future, I thought, well, how might I become more, what would it look like if I was, like, literally, what would it look like if I was more confident? Like, walking into, how would it look like for me to walk into a room and be more confident? What would it look like if, I was talking to an important person who had the key to opportunities if I was more confident.
Sorry, I totally lost the more confident piece. I got so excited about the
No,
skills.
this skill is great.
But that piece, but all of this, and it really is a way. The answer to the question is, how might I become more confident? It's practice creative thinking skills. They are built to increase your confidence, because they, again, they harness all that's good and all the potential of the human imagination and the human experience, and you can galvanize it or pull it together and distill it to highlight the essence of all the strengths you have, all the skills you have, and you can build off of that. So anyway, I'm sorry I go off track. I get excited.
No, this is, I mean, it's almost kind of part of the purpose of this. And so when you go off track, there's like things we can pull, like tree branches go in all places, but they bear fruit. So you can pull the fruits off each of these branches. So I think that's going to be good for the prompts for today. And let's go ahead and move on to conclude the presentation. And there's a few questions in the Q&A that aren't specific to the creative thinking skills. And if you out there have any other just general questions that you're thinking of for Kim, go ahead and place them in the Q&A. And yeah, we'll have a little bit of time to cover them after Kim concludes her presentation.
Hey, thank you, Barbara, by the way. Yes, I'm going to stick around if you have any questions that I didn't touch on or that we didn't touch on. Oh, okay, here we go. Okay, so here's the question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The question is, how can one get in touch with their most important values in a proper order? So a new direction.
Oh, Kim, let's go ahead and conclude the presentation, and then we'll get to the questions.
Okay. Okay.
That way, it gives
So
people who have questions a little bit more time if they want to put more questions in.
okay, sorry. Again, here I am getting excited. What comes next? Well, we're going to leave you with a prompt that you can consider as you tape the set of creative thinking skills to your wall. And that's what
I'm sorry, can you press play? And think that way we get the full screen.
Okay, sorry. Here we go.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
So what comes next is we encourage you not to file away the handout that Oleg sent you, but to print it in full color and tack it to your wall, tape it to your wall, put it somewhere that you'll look at every day to energize your thinking. Because these skills can become your superpowers, and then they can become second nature, so that they replace old habits that may have held you back. So, so what comes next really is a big, broad question. Let's break it down and put it in context, in the context of using creative thinking skills to make a career pivot. And we invite you to think about taking the smallest possible steps to do so. And so, as a way of extending the session and your learning, we're going to leave you with a prompt to think about while you're driving or in the shower or making dinner, sleeping, gardening, walking, wherever you do your most productive thinking. And then we'll, as Oleg said, wrap with the Q&A. So here's the prompt: what I see myself doing. And that's it. Write that one down. What I see myself doing. Visualize it richly and colorfully. Enjoy and use fantasy. Make it swing, make it ring, whatever that means to you. And use playfulness and humor so that you can engage your creative thinking skills. What I see myself doing. So I want to thank Oleg for having me today. It's always a pleasure to work with him and LA County Library. And and to think about creativity and to share. Because when I think about it, I think about imagining the world that we can create for ourselves and our children and their children if everyone uses creative thinking skills. And I always wonder in what might be the ways that we can change the world. So thank you for participating and for attending today. We are going to go to the Q&A. Okay.
What's on the next slide?
Is it the Q&A?
No, there we go. There we go. Go back. Yeah, this one. Let's leave this one on the screen for a little while, because if people want to get in touch with you, they can email you, they can go to your website, they can add you on LinkedIn. There are many ways to get in touch with Kim, and many good reasons to do so.
Great.
So, and then of course, I'll also include that information in the follow-up email, which you all should receive either today or tomorrow. I should be able to edit this video down pretty quickly and get it up on YouTube. So we had a few questions, and I think one of the questions here, what books and or podcasts would you recommend regarding this subject? I feel like this is the one where we can take and then put in the follow-up email, because I think from when we did this program last, there was a few books that were recommended. I can pull those as well. And then Kim, if you have any new ones that you think of, you and I can talk afterward, and we can put those in the email so people can get some more reading on this topic, because it's a vast and exciting topic.
Yeah, and I think that there are so many, and creativity applies to, as I said, every human endeavor. That a way to put that question and that idea into context is to understand where, what is the work that you do, and Googling that question, creativity and user interface design, creativity and public benefit
Grant writing.
Yes. Like make it more specific so that you can answer that question for yourself, and put the question and the answers into the context that you really are addressing for yourself. In general, as Oleg said, we have a list that he will send out by email so that you can go through it broadly and in general, and then take that list and think about it more specifically in terms of your work.
Mm-hmm. So there was a question here. I'm all for meaningful work, but how can there be a balance between pursuing meaningful work and getting paid your worth? I think that's actually, sorry, I'm just jumping in here because I see that kind of question. These kind of question comes up fairly often at Work Ready, and I just want to say, I think that's a sort of a false dichotomy. They're not opposites where you do something meaningful and you get paid what you're worth, or get paid what you would like to get paid. Those things can go together.
Yeah, and I would say too, like going back to the creative thinking skills, ask that question to yourself, reframe it, rephrase it. How can I find meaningful work that offers me a balance between the work and getting paid? That's the balance you're looking for, right? You want to do meaningful work and you want to get paid, and they're not mutually exclusive. You can do both. It may take time. And I think that's also one of the things that we forget about, is that change, it can be glacial and it can be immediate. And there's everything in between. It's a spectrum. And so, think about how much time, and ask around, or Google, which helps us with everything in one way or another. What's a standard or typical or usual kind of time frame it takes to go from being a nuclear engineer to a book illustrator, and I'm sure you will come up with myriad answers. So, but in terms of reframing that question for yourself, I would reframe the question and then go through the skills. Keep open. How might you apply that to the question? And maybe for you, who the person who is asking that question, it might be, I stay open by not coming to immediate conclusions. So maybe I need to do some research, or maybe I need to talk to somebody. Maybe I need to talk to an expert or someone who's been in the field for a long time. So I would use the creative thinking skills as a template. 20 steps, 20 skills, 20 steps, or 20 iterations of your answer to that question. Use the skills. Like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like Yoda. Use the force. You have it. Okay.
I don't hate that you said that. There is no try, there is only do.
Exactly.
The other thing, actually, one more thing that I wanted to say about this is that when it comes to the word meaningful, I mean, even just applying the creative thinking to the word meaningful could broaden the possibilities. To each person, what is meaningful is different. And sometimes even to the same person, looking at what is meaningful from a different perspective might be helpful. I was actually recently thinking about this, considering the job, for instance, of an insurance salesman. Most people would see that job and go, meaningful insurance sales? But if you look at it from a different perspective, you're helping people with risk management in their lives. I mean, when the worst happens, you were the one who helped that person find the appropriate amount of insurance for them so that they can continue, living their life, without, the worst kind of financial consequences, etc. So there's meaning in so many different professions that it may not be as straightforward as just saying, oh, I'm going to work for a nonprofit, or, which nonprofit. So let's talk about the next question here. Would this include brainstorming transferable skills from what one used to do to what one hopes to do?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you again, okay, sorry, trying to think of how to frame my answer to that. I would say you make a list. You make a list of the things that the skills that you hope, and reframe the question. What are the skills that I hope to transfer from what I used to do to what I hope to do? And then you have that set of skills. And then you go back to the creative thinking skills, and like Oleg and I just did, and either apply the random number generator, which is fun, or you go one, you pick a skill from each category, or you pick all the skills and you answer the question for yourself. You brainstorm for yourself. So say, to use Oleg's example, a life insurance person, they had to look at what were called actuarial tables to come up with risk percentages, right? Well, that's a highly mathematical, you have to understand numbers, you have to be have numeracy as opposed to literacy. You have to understand numbers and what they mean. Well, how might that transfer to a job as a grant writer, or to a job as a carpenter? So I think that transferring skills and brainstorming around ways that you can use them, especially those that you want to use, is a really great way to start. Ask yourself the question, go back to the creative thinking skills, and just start elaborating on each one. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
What role do you feel mentorship and formal education play in pivoting into a creative career where you don't have a readily identifiable direct experience, skills, or qualifications?
That's a great question. And in this country, it's different in different countries, because different countries have different paths of advancement and different ways of thinking about apprenticeship and mentorship. I feel that they play an incredibly important role in learning, and that they are that mentorship in particular is pivotal. When you follow someone, or I shouldn't say follow, but follow and learn from someone who really touches something in you, they touch your imagination, they change the way you think, they engage you in a way that brings you to life, right? That's what a great mentor does. A mentor sees something in you and brings it out in you and challenges you to use it, or to use this, not just one thing, but all of yourself. And I'll just say, in relation to formal education, I did not pursue my master's degree until I was 57, because I thought I was going to be a psychologist when I did my undergrad. And then I had a horrible experience in my senior year, in my senior practicum. I didn't ask any other questions besides that. I went, horrible experience, not going to be a psychologist. That was not good thinking. I completely limited myself. Flash forward 30 some years, I'm immersed in creativity, and I'm like, I love this stuff. How do I study it? And I, because of Oleg, actually found a program that allowed me to do that. In this program were doctors. There were, what do you call the people who do blood spatter?
Phlebotomists.
No, like criminologists.
Oh, the blood spatter analysis. Yeah.
There were teachers. There were there were so many advertising folks. This program engaged people from every sector of work life, which was very different than any other program I had seen. And the teachers were mentors, and they were so good at challenging you to do things that scared you. And they were perceptive, and they watched us, and they deliberately put us with people who intimidated us, or who we didn't necessarily jive with. And they gave us projects that we had to work through those issues in harmony, in collaboration. And so I say that mentorship is amazing, and formal education, if you find a really good program that excites you, and the faculty excites you, then I say go for it. It changed my life.
So Kim, we need to put a link to the program in our follow-up email.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah, the one that you went to, because you keep talking about it, you're waxing poetic about this program. It sounds wonderful. And if somebody's out there is interested in considering it, then we should put it in the follow-up email so that they can have that information.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you right now too, it's at the Center for Applied Imagination at the State University of New York at Buffalo. And tremendous faculty, and affordable. It's a distance program, and affordable is relative too. I haven't even started to pay back my student loans because of the political thing around it. So, but so worth it. Changed my life. Loved it.
All right, let me see what we have in the Q&A. Yeah, so one other person asked about the program. So let's do one last question. And then if people have other questions for you, they can always email you. And they can just respond to the follow-up email. Keep it simple. I'm going to go ahead and ask that question. It's a question that I really like, and one that's very applicable just in general in life. Is it risky to be creative in a very buttoned down work environment?
Yes, it is. It is. And it's risky to be creative when people don't value creativity. And so it's a bit of a dance. And I would posit that you would want to use your powers of perception of how to inject your work with creativity without alienating people, because it does, you know, in a button down work environment, people who stand out are suspect or not playing along. And so you have to make a calculated decision, a calculated risk. Is it, am I trying to change my work environment? Then how might I do that? By interjecting or introducing creativity. If it's super buttoned down, maybe you come up with a plan to do that over time in bits, in smaller pieces, so that you're not seen as the, you know, Cyndi Lauper of the office, so to speak, you know, where I'm dating myself using her, but you know, I think that is, yes, it is a risk. Yes, you have to calculate how much of a risk in relation to your work and your employment. If it's a situation you would like to remain in, but would like to see it be more creative, the question might be, what might be all the ways I can influence this work environment and introduce creativity? And then you can hire me to lead a creative brainstorming session.
I buttoned up because I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say that I go opposite, say no, it's not a risk. Even though I agree with you, Kim, that it can be risky, but also to think about creativity, I think that sometimes we get there's this almost a stereotype around what creativity is. That creativity means, you know, kind of being all around, running around the room and writing things down and like, you know, wavy handwriting and like all kinds of things like that. These kind of outside manifestations of what a creative person is, you know, big hair and, you know, loud noises and whatever. But creativity is what happens inside your head. Creativity, those creative thinking skills are things that happen inside your head. And they don't necessarily have to be that much different in a button down environment. I mean, what the suggestions that you might have based on some of those creative thinking skills might be couched in a different way, might be presented differently. But how you persuade your very conservative supervisor to take a slightly different tact, how do you determine how to do that? Well, use the creative thinking skills. You know, in a, you know, in, for instance, there they are, in a legal environment, lawyers who might otherwise, you know, just be very serious, but now looking at legal interpretation all day, like cases and things like that. Well, how do you come up with solutions to a very difficult legal dilemma? Well, creative thinking skills. You know, if you're a problem solver at work, how do you solve there's certain things that you can't just use the tried and true methods to solve the problem. How do you, you know, cut costs and increase productivity? Creative thinking skills. I mean, those are all those creative thinking skills aren't just for the arts or in any specific field. They work for all of life. And so I think I think, at least to me, that's kind of the takeaway that I got from Kim, from you sharing these skills, and me looking at them and me, you know, having them on my printer and putting them on my wall. Because really, like, I feel like almost every thing that occurs for me at work, and I think for many other people in the job search or on the job, it can be um, addressed or at least kind of considered with that paper, and just going, okay, let me just try to break out of my, you know, kind of rote thinking.
Yeah, and I think on you know, building on that idea is going back to the concept of asking a question. So if you're in a situation where you don't know how people are going to respond to an idea or to you contributing in a bigger way to a problem or a situation of any sort, ask a question. And asking questions, again, they give you the opportunity to assess the situation before you jump in, and increase the risk unnecessarily. I think it just depends on so what your goal is. Is it to make the situation better, stay employed, not ruffle any feathers? Okay, then how might you approach it using the creative thinking skills that you don't do all those things?
Right. All right, we're at time. We're a little bit over time, but that's okay. If you have questions that were not addressed or just in your head that you weren't able to type up, respond to the follow-up email, get in touch with Kim. She'll be happy to hear from you, and I'll be happy to hear from you if you want to email me. And before we conclude, I have a post-event survey that I'm posting in the chat. We always appreciate responses to the post-event survey. It tells us what you felt about this program, what we did well, what we could do better, and topics that we can cover in the future of Work Ready. Because what's the point of doing these programs if we're not doing them to respond to your needs? So I just posted the link in the chat, and it should also come up when I end the program. And Kim, thank you so much for sharing creative thinking skills with us, letting us put you on the spot with the prompts, and you bringing those creative thinking skills to bear. Very much appreciated. And to everyone out there, thank you for sticking with us, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thank you, Oleg. It's always a pleasure.